Do you want to know how you can close any sale with 2 questions and 0 confrontation? Then this episode is for you. Hello, Sales Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman Podcast. On today's show, we have Ben Brown, author of Master the Art of Closing the Sale. And on today's show, that's exactly what we're talking about, closing the sale. The 2 questions you need to ask to close the sale to win the business, what you've got to do to prepare before that moment, and what you've got to do afterwards. It all makes total sense in the show. There's lots of great in this one. And so with all that said, let's jump right in. Ben, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you very much. Love the invite. Love putting the message out there.
Glad to have you on. I'm glad that you're excited about sales. I can hear it in your voice. And today we're going to talk about a topic which we kind of touched on before we could record then. It's something so integral to sales. It's something that we're all heading towards, but it's not something that we've covered that often on the show. I don't know why. Perhaps you've got some insights on why we don't talk about it in the industry as much as what we should, but closing. So I'm going to give you a bit of a weird question first, but I think this should tee up and it'll funnel down into some more sophisticated, interesting questions further on in the interview. But is closing the deal, is it a science or is it an art?
It can be both. Because actually it's a process to get there, right? And art is something that you practice. A science is something that's profound. So it is a process to get to that, to the end, to close. But, it's an art because it can be done many ways. Just for example, I worked in a organization one time where we had a long script, where we went through, or, normally it's about a 25 or 30-minute presentation that you do the steps to get in the introduction, the qualification, and things of that nature. And so one day we had what's called call-ins and people that was inquiring about some of the products that we had. And then we'll go through the steps. So what I did in Genius is saying, why not just get through all of these steps, because you don't know if they're qualified or not. You always can back up. So when people call, instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Ben Brown. What's your name? How can I help you? What are you looking for?" and then going through the process, I simply just went directly for the close. And when they called in, I said, "Order desk."
What was the results when you did that?
I saved a lot of time and I got a lot of deals. And they told me you couldn't do that. And I'm like, why? If they already had their mind made up what they wanted, specifically, why would I want to put them through the process and go through all of the malarkey for it? And I just went and said order desk, because one of the techniques is always taught, always assume the sale, right?
So how does this tie in, Ben? Because I think we're on the same wavelength for some of this. How does this tie in the fact that B2B sales, the statistics change every time I look at it or every time someone pings me reports and data on it, but 30 to 40% of the sales cycle has been done without the salesperson. Going for the close early on, or at least framing up the conversation that is what we're there to do, as opposed to all the faffing around that happens beforehand, that fits into that framework, right? When we're doing that, we're helping the customers because we're saving them a whole bunch of time. That's adding value, isn't it?
Absolutely, because I'm assuming the sale every time I want to talk to a potential prospect. I don't know if they're qualified, but who knows? One of the things I teach when I work with clients is, number one, is never assume anything, ever, right? Number two is you either have to like or love the product. If you don't like it or love it, leave it, right? Because that's going to get you through the hard times if you're an entrepreneur. So when I say assume the sale, when I went through that process of saying order desk, like which product do you want? If they're able to choose and do that, I always can do a cool down and go back through the process to make sure they're qualified, right? Because you don't want RMAs and return merchandise. Now, if the person was not ready to purchase, they'll say, "Oh, well, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the product and inquire about some of the pricing," right? That means that they're not ready to order right away. I always can go back down to the first step. "Oh, no problem. My name is Ben Brown. Who are you?" And I can start going them back through the process. So the main thing that I teach people is that you get a sale here and you get a sale here. The difference in your technical knowledge and skill is that you're shortening the distance between the sales, right? So if I go order desk and somebody already orders, I do a 5-minute cool down, I can get on to the next sale. Because the key point, if you're in sales, is get to the next sale and get to the next one, right? Amazon, that thing is just ringing all the time, right? Just ring, 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 ring. And then some people, entrepreneurs, might get a sale on Monday, might get one on Friday. Big deals might get one on to this week and maybe next week. The deal of actually learning sales is shortening that cycle with your skills.
So this makes total sense from a B2C standpoint. It makes a lot of sense from a transactional, small deal size B2B standpoint. Can we fit this into a more complex sale? Is there a way or a methodology or a process, or is there a way of thinking about the close differently, perhaps in a complex B2B sale where it isn't just one phone call and you can assume the sale? Perhaps there has to be a bit of information gathering, a bit of back and forth before you can make that assumption that someone's ready to buy.
hmm So one of the main things that I find out with a lot of businesses is that you ever went to a restaurant and you open the menu and it's like 5 pages?
Hmm.
So it's very difficult for you, the process of a salesperson, make it easy for them to purchase. So some of those things sometimes is having too many objects or too many prices or too many products for them to decide, too many different packages. So when I work with some businesses, if they have like 5 or 6 packages in the same realm, I say cut it down to 3. You know, you decide which one you want them to buy, put that in the middle with the pricing, put a high and a low, right? A lot of people makes it too difficult for clients to make purchases. It's just too many decisions. When you go to buy a car and you walk on a dealership and you see 100 vans, right? It's like, the same van you want, all these different colors, all these different features, right? So what is in your head? It's not about the features that you want. It's like, how am I going to decide through this? The salesperson is starting to ask you what you want, your features and things, trying to hone it down, trying to cut it down towards what you want, right? Because people buy what they want. So some of the time, making it easier for them to actually make a decision makes it easier for the process to become easier, right? So there's little small things like that. When I talk about closing, is getting them to actually make a decision whether they want it or not. And there's a lot of obstacles in the way: pricing, too many products, sometimes just too long of a presentation.
I've
Small
been
things
there,
like that.
Ben. I've sat
Yes.
through them, mate. I've given
Yeah.
them as well.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, you lose a sale, and people don't know that you could lose a sale in the presentation because you're covering a bunch of features that's not beneficial for them. And their attention span, we're humans, start to wane. So by the time you get to the end of the close where you're supposed to be, they're supposed to be at the peak. They're supposed to be so excited at that point that it makes it easier for them to actually make a decision. And sometimes we get in the way of that.
Okay, so tell me if I'm right or wrong here, because I think there's a thread of something here that is going to be really useful. We can use the car analogy for this. Of when we're thinking about the close, should we be getting the potential customer to look at a yes or a binary, a yes or no that they want to buy, and then we can potentially talk about all the options, the upsells, the different versions of things. Should we close them once, get that, whether it's a verbal commitment, whether it's getting an email, whether it's getting whatever kind of procurement on board and agreements within the account? Should we get all that and then start to complicate things, or should we just genuinely not, literally not be trying to complicate things whatsoever and just having free options?
Yeah, I think it's keep it simple, stupid, right? So if you simplify it for them to make a decision, if you watch QVC of the shows that's on, it's normally one product, one price. They don't have multiple prices. They don't have anything that oversimplifies it. And that's B2C. For business to business, the sales cycle might be longer. So there might be different things that you have to do in it as far as features to figure out what people want. And you might need your sales process, what I call the emotional triggers in that, to figure out exactly what they want and the benefits they're going to get from it. But actually, what I teach is you're not selling them the product, you're selling them the benefits, right? What are you going to do with the product? What are you going to do if you don't get the product? I always tell one analogy I use. I said, if you're on fire, how much would you pay for water?
Well, another analogy on this that I really like is, water tastes pretty bland. Most people will have a cup of tea, a coffee, they'll put squash or juice in the water to change it. But if you're in the desert and you hadn't drank anything for 2 days, or if you've ever done a crazy hard workout or a long run or whatever it is, water tastes better than anything else, right? Water tastes amazing at that point.
Yeah. So, but not even that. But like I said, if you're on fire, a lot of people sell at a distance and they're afraid to ask those important questions. The difference between a good and a great salesperson is the number of questions that you ask, right?
So what's an example of an emotional trigger? Because I think a lot of your work kind of pulls around this. I think the audience will be able to take a guess at it. Or what's an example of one that we can kind of fix in our brains?
I use a car a lot. So cars, people always can analogize buying a car. So when you go and you purchase a car, you get in there and people say, what features are you looking for and things of that nature. So you envision a mother looking for a minivan for her vehicle, right, for her kids. So when you sit her down, you say, okay, what color you want, what features you want, and say, what features are you looking for your children? Safety. And then you start figuring out, well, what would that feel like if you had a van feeling safe with your kids? Well, I wouldn't have to look back. I can drive a whole lot better. And then you ask the important question, how would that make you feel? You know? So you're selling based upon that emotional feeling. I'm going to feel great in a new van. My other one, the brakes was going off. So if you don't get a van, what's going to happen now? So you can do an upside or downside on that. Now, you can also do that in B2B. When you get the product, what's going to happen? Well, the production's going to go up. What's going to happen with the production? Well, it's going to give us less time to actually do that and also create more income. Okay, how much more income that you think that would generate, right? So if they ever give you a number or a figure on that, they're dead. So they say, oh, well, that would give me about 10 to 12,000 more dollars. Now, if I have that, I'm not even talking about the product. I can braze over the product and go back. And now you see how you can generate 10 to 12,000 dollars more with this product. You're going to get their attention with that because that's sometimes they don't even think about that. They haven't thought about that. So that's why I say the difference in a good and great salesperson is the number of questions that you're going to ask. I'll put the analogy down because people have to understand. Barbara Walters that interviews at New Year's Eve, right?
Hmm.
The legendary Barbara Walters, great interviewer. She interviews the top people for that year, and they've been interviewed how many times? Hundreds, right? But you watch her because she's going to ask the tough questions, right? Some people sit down with her and say, I'm not going to cry, Barbara. The interview hasn't even started yet, right? You're not going to make me cry because they've been interviewed all year, but they know when they get in front of her, she's going to ask the tough question. How long you been wanting to be a man? Bam. She's going to hit them right on camera. They don't know it's coming. And suddenly you see the emotions start to come out of them. And even though it's New Year's Eve and people have a lot of things to do, they put it on New Year's Eve and people watch it. You should be out or should be watching the ball drop. They're watching Barbara Walters because they want to see what she does to them. And that's a sale, right? Because she's selling that program. She's selling that interview. So the questions that she asks is going to be different than everybody else asks, and she's earned the right for that because she's legendary in that field.
Maybe I should start opening these podcasts with that kind of question of how long do you want to be a man or woman or whatever it is. I think we get some interesting responses from the sales experts if we did that. Right. Let me just recap here because we're covering ground fast, which is awesome. So this is all preparation before the close, and we can dive into whether the close is a moment, whether it's just a gradual process, whether it's something that we ask for specifically. We'll cover that in a second. But Ben, what we're talking about here is we take the perceived, or for example, the car, the physical benefits of the car. We're then making and consciously doing this. We're tying it into an emotion of the buyer, and I guess we have to go through a couple of these benefits and go back and forth before we get to an emotion that if in your example, someone has a minivan, a van, and the brakes are shot, and they're going to buy a new one because they got kids. Clearly, that's a no-brainer. And if they have that conversation with you, it's going to be an easy deal to close. And then the next level, or going a layer deeper than that, if we can tie that value to a physical value. So in the B2B world, it'd be, well, if you buy this new printing software to produce t-shirts or whatever it is, random example off my head, it allows you to design and print them 5 times quicker. So you're going to get 5 times the output. So you can either produce 5 times more t-shirts during the day, or you can cut your staff by kind of 20% or whatever the number is. That's the holy grail here. That's what we're aiming for, right? That number that allows us to match it up on a piece of paper against the value or the monthly cost of the product or service that we're selling. And so it becomes a no-brainer. Is that what we're aiming for with all of this?
Absolutely, because most of the salespeople either go too fast or don't think about those steps, right? A lot of the steps that I tell people is slow the sale down if you possibly can. That way you can control it. If you can control it, then you can monetize more because you're able to get more results because your skill level is up, right? Most people just talk too fast, and they lose them. right?
And why do we do that, Ben? Just to drill into that and the psychology of it a second, is it because we are not listening? Is it because we're scared of having to actually respond to an answer rather than just give our pitch? Why do we speak so fast and listen so little?
Drinking too much coffee. No, but most of the salespeople are enthusiastic, right? You're supposed to be enthusiastic and you have confidence, right? So you're assuming that you go through this pitch so many times, especially if you're using the same product, you're doing your own pace. I was talking to a woman yesterday for an interview, and I was like, she wanted to work for this company and she wanted to do sales, and I said, your background is awesome. What you do is awesome. Your education is totally on point. But I said your voice inflection, you need to start slowing it down. I know it's the interview process, but slow it down. Do the pace of what your customer is. If I'm talking to somebody, we're talking UK, but if you're talking to somebody in southern region of the United States, you need to slow it down. New York speed, right? If you're calling Alabama, slow it down because they talk at a different inflection than you. So you need to be at the pace of whatever your customer is.
I think you kind of glossed over it there, but that's an interesting thing to think about as well. That we're pitching the same product day in, day out, day in, day out, and we know it all, and we're just regurgitating the information. If we're doing it at the pace that we can regurgitate it, that is not the pace that someone who knows nothing about it or knows very little about it can comprehend and understand it. Perhaps we should, I don't know, a good analogy or a good way of describing it. Perhaps we should be pitching at the pace of, if we're trying to explain to our mum, dad, brother, sister, girlfriend, partner, if we're trying to explain the product to them, right? Would that be a good way of slowing ourselves down if we put it in that perspective?
Absolutely. I tell people to record themselves and listen to what the feedback is from the customer. I tell people that, sales is a skill, right? Either you're getting better or worse. You're never even. So there's little small nuances in there, a lot of things, voice inflection, speed, questions to ask, sales process, your scripting. A lot of these pieces go in there, and it's good to be on point every day. It's hard to have everything that day because we're humans and we start thinking about things or something would happen in the office. Your main attention, like I said, be a good salesperson, you have to be able to do two things really, right? Three things really. You have to know your knowledge about your product. You have to listen to the client, and then you have to know your process, your sales process, which most people don't have, or some people just give them a script, and
Yeah.
we assume, oh, this is good, this is going to work, and it doesn't work out. So main thing, when you get off the phone, hang up, it didn't work out, figure out what the problem is. It's either one of those things. Good salespeople always analyze themselves. I lost a sale because of this. It's normally not because they're not qualified. It's normally not because they might be an a-hole or whatever. It all goes back to you, right? It's your job to give them a tour of your product or service where it's effective, where they can use it and they get benefits from it, and you're asking for monetization in the end.
Okay, Ben. So we've done the preparation here. Perhaps we've hit on this holy grail, we've smashed it, we've got them to, in an email or verbally, and we've kind of written it back to them and confirmed it, that if they spend X amount of dollars per month on this SaaS marketing software, whatever it is, they're going to get X, Y, Z in return. Clearly, hopefully one is higher than the other and it makes sense for them. What happens then, Ben? Is the close a question? Is the close a series of emails that kind of escalate and do what perhaps people would be taught 10 years ago, just get a yes and a yes and a yes and a yes until like the PO comes in? What is the close at this point when we've assumed we've done all the good work, we've got them on board, they're excited about the product, it's the right fit for them, we're the right person to deliver it. What is the close at that point?
Okay. I'll make it a little bit easier for you. In my book, I said close on product concept, right? So the plane is coming down. So for people who are anxious, now this is when we're most emotional as salespeople. This is when what your work has actually paid off. You found the prospect, you put the marketing out there, they called you, you're on the phone with them, you're putting them through the paces and the whole deal. And now you're getting towards the reward. And this is when salespeople subconsciously freak out, right? I'm going towards the close. I don't know if I've done everything right. I'm not confident, or I'm very confident, if you've done it over and over again. So one of the steps that I put in my book is called close on product concept. So after I go through the presentation and get my buying signals and yes patterns going, and I get enough of those going that, okay, this person can use this product, they're excited about it. It's a simple process that I add called close on product concept. And it's very simple. It's a two-step process. It's very simple. It says, so based on everything that we just went over, does it sound like a winner? Right? And you want a yes. This is an individual step. Does it sound like the way you want to go? Now, I haven't asked for the credit card or the actual close yet, but I'm asking you in that, does it sound like a winner? Which means, does everything that I say sound like it's going to solve your problem? And then I'm saying, does it sound like the way you want to go? And pause. Both of these are pauses. If they don't give you something, a yes in that, there's something that you're missing. So I'm not assuming going directly to the close. If I get two yeses on that, then I'm going to be able to price this such and such, which card you want to put it on, which purchase order. So it's a preemptive. I put those two together for people that don't have confidence in closing, right? So if I say, does it sound like a winner? And the guy goes, it sounds okay. Okay, what is that telling me? This guy's not ready to close yet. So if I ask for the close, I'm going to go through a number of objections that I'm going to have to handle. Most people got a book about this thick of objections. You can lead a horse to water, all this kind of other stuff, right? You want to be able to handle that up front, right? So my process is to handle most of the objections before you get to the close. So when you do get to the close, your chances of closing is, anywhere between 80%, because you've done the work up above. And also, when they give you the two yeses, that gives you the confidence to now ask for the order. Numerous businesses I deal with, I listen to, they don't even ask for the order. So it's like, they're waiting for the customer to come give them the credit card. So they're missing that process alone. The brilliancy taken over in these days has been done by copywriters. Copywriters write the emails and write all the stuff out. So by the time they're ready, right? But if you're doing phone or person to person, you're still doing that process. So yeah, close on product concept gives you the ability to give you the confidence, and then you can go in and say what card you want to put it on, what purchase order, what method of payment would you like to use, and then be quiet, because we know that's another rule as well.
You mentioned something that I want to go back to, and that is, this is the moment where salespeople tend to get emotional. And some deals I get emotional about it, I get wrapped up in it, and I know that I shouldn't be doing this perhaps, which I'll ask you about in a second, but I get wrapped up, and if it comes in, it's amazing. It's the greatest feeling ever. I love closing new deals. It's why I hate the rest of sales, but the upside of closing a deal, especially when it's my own business, when it's the podcast, when it's ad space, whether it's sponsorship for the live events, whether it's some of the lead gen that we do for some of the biggest companies on the planet, on that side of things, when I close those deals, that makes up for all the shit I've had to put up with beforehand of prospecting and bringing people on board and all this kind of stuff. So I'm super excited about that. And I feel like from that perspective, the emotions is a good thing. But then to have those high emotions, clearly you've got to have the low emotions. So and you can give me your perspective on this. I don't know if there's data on it, or I don't know if it's anecdotal, but do the top sales professionals and the top salespeople in B2B, B2C, do they get emotional, both good and negative, about closing the deal? Or are they just flat? Do they just treat it like a process that they have to go through, and they don't tie any of the almost self-worth and confidence and other elements to it as well?
Is gambling an emotional process?
So depends. I'll play poker with no emotion, but the rest of the gambling is ridiculous and stupid, and probably ties more emotion to it than what it should.
They say that people that are addicted to gambling is addicted to the losing. It's not the winning that gives them the high, right? So, of course, what you're doing, you're putting yourself out there based on your product or service and your personality and your skills to the test to find out if it's worth it. And we all have value system problems. Am I really worth it? Is a product really worth it? And that comes to the test of the close. So, of course, when you get towards the end, if you start thinking about the commission, of course, especially if you're commission only, you're definitely going to be emotional, right? I'm ready to pay my bills. So, you want to actually understand and have the best chances when you go in there. And like you said, you related to yourself. When you get that sale, your hands went out like this. What does that mean? I'm excited, right? The rest of the stuff is rubbish. But this is the point that I want to get. If I could just close all day, I would love life, right? but you have to do the work beforehand to do it most times.
So I'm going to push you a bit further here of, should we be getting emotional about it, or should we be like the Terminator and just going through the process, asking the questions and being less emotional in the sale? And this depends whether, if you're selling someone a Ferrari and you're not emotional and you're not getting them emotional about a purchase like that, then, clearly he's going to have problems, versus if you're selling SaaS accounting software, then perhaps you don't need to be as emotional on that. So with that said, should we be putting emotion into the buying process and perhaps even getting some of this to rub off on the prospect as well?
Well, you want them to be emotional, but if you're a good salesperson, you can take the emotional out of it because your skill level is so high. You've seen it so many times. You know exactly where you're going in that process. I mean, you're feeling them out because you should automatically know by the time you get towards that process that your chances of getting it is so high that it doesn't matter because you're getting on to the next prospect, right? So yeah, you want in the beginning when in sales, of course, you're emotional, you're all over the map, your confidence level is down. So if your confidence level is high, you're not going to be non-emotional, right? So most of the football players, when they go out there and play, their heart rate drops, right? Because they've done it so many times, they know what they're doing. So it becomes automatic because they practice. And I also want to emphasize that, and I tell people that sales, when you read a book or you do a video or something like that, or you go to a seminar, you get the manuals, that's all theory. It's theory. And so sales is a skill. And so most of the students I work with, we drill, we practice, I listen to tape. That's where it all comes out, right? Football players can go and watch film all week, right? But when they go on the field, that's when it all comes out. You've been prepping, but that prepping should be show on the field becomes second nature. I'm a Marine, so I was in the Marine Corps from '88 to '94, and so we trained all the time, just train, 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 and it just got so monotonous all the time. We're training until we got called up to go to the Gulf War. So when you're in that type of situation and stuff starts flying, your second nature takes off, your training takes off, right? Because we practice it so much that you know exactly what you need to do automatically without thinking. So your mind is always aware of the stuff that doesn't come up. So as a salesperson, when you hear an objection that you haven't heard before, right? You don't freak out, right? You just okay, that's something new. Let me see if I can handle that, and so on and so forth. So I emphasize practice, 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 practice all the time because never practice on your clients because that's where you start flubbing it up and don't know where you're going. And what do you mean by that? And well, don't you really want it? They start to begging. You said that this and that. So yeah, you want it to be non-emotional, but that comes with training and practicing.
Sure. Well, I guess that's being a professional, right? Versus being an amateur. And there's probably a really good metaphor to describe this. And I'm going to butcher it as I kind of make one up off the top of my head. But you don't want to be practicing making your money on people that you could be, and you don't want to see people as just bags of cash, obviously. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't want to be practicing making money on people that you could be making money from, right? That should be done before the whistle gets blown or before the kind of checkered flag gets waved. That is a concept that maybe it's difficult. Maybe you don't want to sit in front of your sales manager and role plays. Maybe you don't want to practice and look silly, but it's just such an integral part to all of this. I literally went back and forth with a sales trainer from one of the biggest sales training companies on the planet the other day on Instagram, on LinkedIn, sorry. And any of the audience that follows me on LinkedIn will have seen this because half of the audience and half of Sales Nation chimed in to shut him up as well. So he just went on a total rant about how podcasts aren't useful, how it's passive, how you're not even really listening to it. When you're kind of in the car, you're at the gym, there's no value to it, it's a waste of time. And so I just pointed him very simply towards the episodes that we'd done that week, and it was only coincidental. On the Monday, the episode was on how to do a role play with or without a sales manager, how to rope in your colleagues, how to find a mentor or a coach to do some role playing with you. That was the whole point of the podcast, to give you something actionable to go and practice in the real world versus just listening passively. And the next episode was what you alluded to then, Ben, of having a practical way, a step-by-step guide given to you on the podcast, which you can implement literally that day from listening to the show, of how to write down objections, how to document them so that you can practice them, go through them. And so you don't just succumb to what I've done in the past, which is getting the same objection over and over and over for 2 years before you actually sit down and write a proper way to revoke it and get over it. And obviously, once you've done it once, you practice it a couple of times, it comes naturally then, as opposed to trying to blag it every time it comes up. So I went back and forth with this guy, and must have been 100,000 views on this post on LinkedIn, if not more. It was 100,000 when I stopped looking at it, because then he went back and deleted all his posts. So clearly, we can talk about it off air, perhaps. But clearly, he got a scolding off someone in his company for mouthing up and slagging off the show, when the CEO of the company that he works for has been on the podcast multiple times. So, if the CEO if the CEO sees value in being on the show, then perhaps as a sales trainee, you shouldn't be mouthing up and trying to take a stand on something of that nature. But we digress. Ben, what do we do? So we've gone through the close and product concept. We've asked the 2 questions. We've got 2 yeses. We perhaps have got. Oh, let's not gloss over this. How do we ask for the purchase order? How do we ask for the credit card details? Are we just simply asking? Do we need to overcomplicate it? Are we overcomplicating all of this way too much anyway? How do we go about asking for the paperwork or the credit card?
Keep it simple, stupid. What card you want to put it on? What method of payment you normally use? How would you like to? Let me get you enrolled into the system now. Right? So just make that statement alone. Just keep it 3 or 4 syllables. What card you want to put it on? How do I enroll you? Don't make it. So let's get you started. Because one of the things I do is that when you're building a sale, you're building a house, right? When you're starting from scratch. So the base of the house, the introduction, the qualification as you go up, the entrance point, the emotional triggers, you're getting into the presentation. You're building this house. Actually, you're building a house with a little hole on the top. So all of this is to protect you. And the only way they can escape is from this little hole. So when you get to the close, the only way they can escape, because you confirmed everything else, right? And you can feed that back to them when they give you an objection, which is crap, right? So you already done that. So all you're doing is when you're getting toward the end, you're giving that little hole. So you already know you're at that hole waiting with your objection killer, because you've heard it before. So you're not used to all of these weird objections. Normally anywhere between 3 to 10 objections, right? And what I tell people, the first time somebody give you objection, sometimes it's not even real. So don't even listen to it. Just go back and reclose. And you'll be amazed if somebody said, well, I got to think about it. Well, Jim, you already told me that you have this, right? Yeah. And you already told me this, right? Yeah. So what card do you want to put it on? Visa. And some people are like, it worked. I'm like, yeah, because you're dealing with human nature. Nobody wants to be a laydown, right? No matter whether you like it that much, you've been somewhere where you've seen something, you wanted to buy, the guy pushed you and you're like, nah, I just can't do it just because I can't be a fish. I don't want to lay down that hard. I got to give him some object. I got to think about it, right? So when you walk into a clothing store, and somebody says, hey, may I help you? What's the first thing you normally say? I'm just looking. That's my throw off objection. Just go away, right? So if I come in, are you looking for something for yourself or for your family? Now you have to come at, no, I'm just looking for something for my family. Oh, which family member? So now I'm overcoming objections, right? So it's the same thing. I'm smooth with that. So yeah, your question is right. That box, when I say the box of the house, you built it up. If you go backwards, back into those other steps, and you find out to say, well, I would like to purchase, but I got to talk to my partner first. What does that tell you? You didn't qualify. Now you're screwed. So now the decision maker is not in the room. So now what do you do? Well, what time he's in? So the house is starting to crumble, right? And whenever you get off the phone, it's always harder to get somebody on the phone the second time, right? So you want to make the biggest ability that when you actually do the close, that everybody's in the room, decision's there, the money's there, the objections and everything. I mean, not the objections, but the needs and the wants that they have is there. So when I close, I want the highest percentage of them saying yes the first time, and maybe a couple of objections on the end, and then I can handle them. But most people don't handle objections beforehand properly, and that's where they get into trouble.
This reminds me, this whole idea of going for the close quickly, of building the house and then relying on the fact that you've confirmed all these facts, that you confirmed the viability of the project or the product, so you can loop back if there's further objections down the line. I bought a BMW the other day, or a couple of weeks ago now, and I'd researched it. I knew exactly M235i. I knew exactly what I want. It was 2 years old. I knew exactly the mileage. It's BMW used approved. I knew that I wanted to have so many kind of years left on the warranty, all this good stuff. And I ordered it up from down south up to a dealership in Leeds near me, and I knew I was going to pay cash for it. And it was essentially, it's the first thing I bought since doing this podcast for nearly 3 years now. That has nothing to do with the business. It was the first treat I've had, so I was really looking forward to it. The only thing I wanted to look at with the car was the color. So it's in this like deep red, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't too loud and boisterous. And cars look different in pictures than they do in person. So I went and viewed it. I can't remember the guy's name now. Damn it! I told him to listen to the show as well, so he might even listen to this one. And sorry for forgetting your name, but he kept, how to describe it. He did well. I think he'd only been at the dealership for 2 weeks or so he was new to that dealership. He's been selling cars for a while, but he kept almost bringing up objections. And I knew if the color was right, I was going to buy it, because it ticked every. I'd done this as people talk about in B2B space all the time at the moment. It's a hot topic of, I'd done all this research beforehand. I just needed him to facilitate the deal. I didn't need him to. There was nothing to upsell. There was no options to add, because it was 2 years old. The car, it was used approved as opposed to brand new, ordering it from the factory. And he kept bringing up these objections, and he kept trying to qualify me, and he kept going through these little things, to the point of halfway through the test drive, I just told him I'm going to have it. It was just like, let's talk about something else. And we started talking about Nissan GTRs in the end, because I've been looking at them as a kind of end goal car kind of thing to have. We could talk when we stop recording, we could talk about cars if you like, Ben, because the audience are sick of hearing me talk about GTRs and BMWs at the moment. But
mine is silver.
You've got a GTR?
No, mine is silver. Yours is white. Oh. My dream one is a silver. So we're good.
So me too. I ordered this on Amazon to give me motivation. They sent me the wrong color. So silver is my choice of Nissan as well. So we can touch base on that in a second. But the point of this tale, before I diverge too far from it, was that all he had to do was ask when I got in it, and I had a ridiculous grin on my face, and he took me down this back alleyway so I could rag the nuts off the car and just feel the performance of it before kind of the first thing we did on the test drive after it was warmed up a little bit. All he had to do then was, do you want it? And I would have said yes. I would have shook his hand. We would have talked about cars. I had a nice 15 minutes of no sales talk, nothing like that. But he kept trying to, he was just on the verge of selling me over and over and over. And if he does listen to this show, that's a bit of feedback for him. But it was interesting, as you say this and you go through it, the questions that he, from a B2C perspective, could have asked me are the same that I would ask someone in medical devices if I was selling to a surgeon. The same questions I'd ask him or her as well. So it was interesting. And Ben, one final thing to wrap up on this, mate. And this is a totally loaded question, because I know exactly where you'll go with it. When we get the order, is that done? Is that the close finished? Or is there anything else we need to ask for at that point?
No. In the book, the sale is not done until you get a testimonial or a referral. Period. People leave money on the table all the time. They get so excited, they close, they hang their phone up, and they're like, oh, I got another sale, and you have to go to another cold call. When I train people, I put in a process, and it's basic questions or something simple as to the fact that, hey, thanks for purchasing the product. We're going to love it. Now, here's the part where we normally ask for referrals, we normally get between 3 to 5. Who would you like to start with? And that's another sale. I normally get between 3 to 5 referrals. Who would you like to start with? I'm not assuming that you don't have anybody. I'm not assuming you have everybody. I'm asking. And I'd rather get on the phone next with somebody that knows you, that has the same problem, that you're going to tell me. And when you start telling me, oh, well, you could talk to Phil. Okay, when is the best time to talk to Phil? Should you call him or should I call him first? When is the best time to talk to him? What do you think his problem is? So when I call Phil up, Phil is already going to be warm. I already know probably some of his problems. And because you're friends, you're probably in the same demographics. You still might have the same issues, same thing. So you're going to help me sell your friends. I mean, the insurance companies are great about this. This is what they do. Friends and family, AT&T, right? So yeah, I always tell people the sale is not over till you get a referral or a testimonial, and a testimonial is from a happy client. Where people make mistakes is they say, I'm not going to ask for a referral until I know that they're happy. Well, there's no guarantee that your product is going to make them happy. Many times I've had clients where I've sold the client, he's given me 3 referrals. I've sold the 2 out of the 3 that he had, and he came back and wanted to return the product, and I had no problem with that. And he gave a great testimonial because he had no problem returning it back. He gave me a full, because I already made double the money. You see the idea and the concept. So in the end, my book says game-changing 10-step process for getting more clients and referrals. Because a referral, numerous times I've been in businesses where if it's done right, they don't even want leads. They're just working referrals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather work a referral than a cold email with a name and a mispronounced number or some of that nature, right? Because what am I doing? I'm shortening the period in between the time of sales. And if you do sales right, it's very enjoyable. And you get a lot of rewards if you're working with the right products and you're honest and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that I emphasize is that, no, the sale is not over until you get a referral. Just ask. Most people just don't ask. And then a testimonial, because that testimonial, what can you do with that? You ask for reviews on your podcast. You ask for, all of this stuff builds up your brand. So I could take that testimonial and put it on a website. I could take it, I could put a video testimonial. I can use that for marketing. That's a free marketing tool for somebody who's happy. So that's going to help me sell the next time. Or a referral is somebody that I can talk to that I possibly could sell as well. So the deal is not done till you get a testimonial or a referral.
Clearly, I knew where you were going to go with that, and I'm passionate about both these topics as well. And I recorded an episode with Dory Clark, who's a personal branding and marketing expert recently. And the whole episode turned into, and it was a total mistake, and it was down to the questions got thrown out about 4 seconds into the interview. And we went down this line of conversation of what is a website for a salesperson? What should they have on theirname.com? And the thing that stuck out in the conversation was twofold. And I'll just reiterate here for anyone who hasn't heard or seen that interview. Testimonials. So for me, when I worked in medical devices, if I could get testimonials from the surgeons that I've sold to, because all the surgeons know each other, it's quite a tight-knit community. If they see Mr. Blah on one and Mrs. Blah Blah on the other side of the page, just a line saying, Will was really helpful. Will knew this procedure inside out. Will knew this product inside out. Will helped us out with a competitive product. And then we ended up going with his product overall, whatever it was. Will took us on this training event and helped me progress professionally within that realm. So there was that element to it, which is testimonials, which when I worked in medical devices, never asked for. But now I've started asking with all the ad sponsors for the podcast and the other bits of revenue that we're bringing in. Everyone I ask now, which clearly is why I brought up that question, because I knew you would go with it, Ben, I ask less for referrals and more for testimonials. I think for me, when other podcasters don't have them on a website, when other podcasters don't have testimonials in a media kit, it differentiates me from the competition, and it allows people to trust me before they've even spoken to me because they see their peers and colleagues on this media kit, on this sales page, whatever it is. But the flip side of that was also to have the brands that you've worked with in the past, whether you have worked for this company, almost like a CV or resume, but just the logos and just a one-liner from someone in that company, that is just as powerful and just as useful. And I think these are all small tools that we can build up over time, and perhaps not so useful for B2C, but for B2B, if you're dealing with a procurement team, professional buyers, if you're dealing with a C-suite, they're probably going to Google you before they do business with you, right? They want to see all this. And I think the little pieces of the puzzle that we can put in place before we come to the close, it just makes it more seamless. It makes it easier and makes it quicker, and does what you've been saying the whole way through the show, shortening that sales time. That's the most is that the most important thing? Is that the biggest bang for buck thing we can do as sales professionals? Shorten that sales time from lead to close?
Yes, that's your job. Your job is to close deals. So, if you don't close one today and you don't close one till Friday, but if you could start closing the day in between, how much your day is going to be better. Because, if you're working commission or you're working for yourself, that means more money, and that makes it easier for us, and it makes you more confident. My product is worth it, right? Because that's what we always say. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Am I worth it? Am I worth it? I mean, you're on the phone talking. Am I worth it? Is it worth it? We always got that in the back of our mind. Do they see what I see? Right? I see it. Do they see it? Right? So if you keep doing that on a regular basis, and it just keeps continuing on getting faster and faster and faster, your problem is growth at that point, which is a good thing. I'm growing too fast. I might have to hire somebody. Now those headaches come about if you're an entrepreneur, right? That's a whole nother deal, a whole nother podcast. But yeah, that's a good thing one of the things, I only train 10 to 15 people at a time. So, I develop a course which I'm putting out in the next 30 days so that people can have it through the videos online course, because I'm the mini me of Grant Cardone. I'm very small, and I'm doing one-on-one. I'm trading time for money, right? Because I'm getting the value from the people that I'm working with individually as I build my brand. But 2-3 years from now, if I stay in the field, of course, getting me on the phone with you one-on-one is going to be extra amount of money, and all that, is based on my time. So it's the same thing in sales. What is your time worth, right? How can you shorten a sale? Is it my skill? Is it my products? Does I have too many products? All these things come into play. You're a tour guide for your product or service. Make it a good tour, and people will enjoy the ride, and people will reward you for it.
Makes total sense. And I guess there's almost a vicious cycle here of the shorter you can make your deal cycle whilst keeping the closing rate obviously quite high. There's probably maths you can do to lose a bit of closing rates whilst closing the shortening the length of it, and you still end up winning overall. The vicious cycle is the shorter you make it, the more you get done, the more reps you get in, the better you get at it over time, right? And so I guess it's almost a process that eventually you want to be in the position where you need to tell your sales manager that you need some kind of assistant or someone to do admin. I guess that's almost the goal to go out of all of this. And with that, Ben, I can carry on talking about this and cars especially for another 45 minutes, mate. But to wrap things up, there's one question that I ask everyone that comes on the show, and that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Study more, invest in yourself, and learn the craft, which it is a craft. Don't take it for granted. Most of the people that get into sales by accident, or it's not a college ambition. There's no sales MBA, right? So people get in sales coming from business, or they start their own business and they learn that they have to sell. So one of the things I tell people is that you knew how to sell as a child because you always ask all the time. That's close. And your parents told you that was rude. And then you went through K through 12, and then you went to college, and whatever you wanted, you either could pay for it in the conventional civilization. If you didn't have the money for it, you couldn't get it. So by the time you start a business or go into business and selling in your 20s or 18, unless you're a paper boy or, a Girl Scout or something like that, you have lost that skill for 20 years. So, and college does not teach it. But every business has to sell. Everything is based on selling. So your skills has been diminished because you haven't been able to use them. And people say, we live in a conventional civilization with prices on everything. You go to third world countries where the people negotiate. When you go to the markets, they negotiate. There's no prices. They have a skill. They know how to negotiate. They know how to price. So when they come to countries like the UK and they come to the United States, they're used to hustling. They're used to selling all the time. And people get annoyed. Oh, don't try to sell me all the time. But that's what business is all about. So I try to change the mindset for a lot of people in doing that. But yeah, if there's anything you need to do when you have your own business, learn how to sell, because you don't need a website if you could just pick up one of these and call somebody and sell them. Doesn't cost you anything, right?
We talk about the cold call being dead, how cold email is getting hard to get through. But if you've got the skill set, and I'll say this, and I'll put this on the record for Sales Nation, and I know it's harder and hard to get people on the phone. But if you've got the skill set where you can pick up the phone, have a conversation with someone, not piss them off, transvert and send this element of you're taking up their time and you're disrupting them into having a useful conversation and adding value to them. If you can get that done snappily, and they leave the phone conversation being excited or ready for the next call or ready for the next step, that is a skill set that, clearly you mentioned Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone teaches and is passionate about his team that clearly have that skill set and they've implemented it well because he's making a shitload of money and he's investing it. seemingly correctly in all his real estate. But that skill set is suitable for medical devices, it's suitable for real estate, it's suitable for selling cars, whatever it is. That is a transferable skill that will see you have a job for the next 50 years. Being able to pick up the phone, being able to interrupt someone, not piss them off, have an interesting conversation, share insights, whatever it is, lead it to a next action. That is something that's maybe it's a conversation for another time, Ben. But that is a skill set that I encourage all of Sales Nation to at least try and develop. Even if you're some nerd selling SaaS marketing software and you can hide behind email, the phone skills are crazy important, and it will differentiate you against everyone else in your team. So with that, Ben, and that that little bit of a rant over with, tell us a little bit about the book, tell us where we can find it, and tell us where we can find out more about you as well.
Awesome. Well, my book came out last year. It's a bestseller. It's called Master the Art of Closing a Sale. It's basically no fluff. Give you the steps that we use, 10 steps normally in every sale. Not every business need all 10 sales, all 10 steps. But it basically gives you the 10 steps of what a sales process actually does. And it's front loaded, so you're not worried about the close because you do most of the work up front. So if you want to reach out, it's on Amazon under Benjamin Brown, Master the Art of Closing a Sale. But everybody can go to 360salesconsulting.com. That's 360salesconsulting.com. And on there is actually a free guide of the 10 steps that you can use to use those steps right now, right away. And if they want to reach out to me, I do sessions for people, free sessions to understand their business problem. I have clients in Spain, I have Australia, UK, United States. So worldwide, I use Zoom and I do one-on-one coaching with them, and I record the calls, and people, they can record their calls and we can critique them as well. So I do business assessment, sales assessment right now on a lot of things. So I got my hands in a lot of good things, happening nowadays. But yeah, the book has been great. I'm doing a presentation tonight for 30 minutes for 40 realtors. Great. So, but yeah, I'm doing that tonight. So I'm bringing the book and they're buying the book, but it's been awesome being in this field, been in it for over 23 years, and just being able to teach it has just been a blessing, because I see when I give people that skill and that lights come on and they finally say, now I got it. Now I understand what it's about. When they actually use it and it works and they come back like karate, I did break that board. Yeah, you did break that board. So, just being able to do that. And that's what got me into it is teaching and giving some value for people. When they use this, they could use it the rest of their life if they practice it right.
Amazing stuff. Well, I'll link to the book, the website, and all that good stuff in the show notes to this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. With that, Ben, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your energy, mate. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.